Heat podcast, where we share news, information about processes, products, markets on the heat market. And today we actually have a guest on the studio. How's it going, Damian?
It's going good.
Can you speak to the microphone just a little closer? Yeah, well, just get a little closer. So it's pretty nice actually to have a guest because we have done this by Zoom, by Teams, because of the travel restrictions. And right now it's January 20 of 2021, and COVID spiked like a beast in the last month. But we have Damian traveling from Cincinnati, Ohio, all the way to Mexico. So what are you doing here, Damian? You had the guts to travel to get into a plane and travel to Mexico because you love your customers, I bet, right?
Exactly.
Right. So how's it traveling internationally right now with all this COVID situation going?
This is the first trip I've taken since March of last year, and it's probably the last trip I'll be taking for probably another 6 months based upon the restrictions that are coming. So.
Well, yeah. So how's your Delta status? Are you still being platinum?
They took care of me for this year, but there won't be next year.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know Damian Bratcher, I believe if there's a guy who has traveled all around the world and has seen heat treat shops in every country, in every continent, has been exposed to all different kinds of industry, it's Damian Bratcher, right?
That would be true, except for Antarctica.
Well, maybe after maybe in the future when the poles melt. Maybe. But yeah. So what we're going to talk about? So basically, Damian has traveled all around the world for the last 20 years. I bet.
Yes.
You're basically half of your time in the United States, and before COVID, right? And half of the time Asia, Europe, Latin America. Australia, Africa, right? So we're going to devote this podcast in order to understand a little heat treat worldwide. So who's better to speak about it than the expert on the subject, Damian Bratcher? So if you could just give us an introduction of how you started in this industry and what have you seen on every place that actually caught your eye, and then we're going to go a little on the different type of markets. Of course, we're going to talk about China. China's a big thing. There's a lot of steel being manufactured in China, but we don't want to get too narrow on China. Of course, there's Europe. There's you mentioned Africa. I didn't know Africa had heat treat.
South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, and a few other places.
But yeah, what's the main market in Africa?
Railroad steel.
Railroad steel
and automotive.
Okay. So we're going to cover that. And especially Damian, it's his main goal is actually to develop business in these places, and I believe it will be very valuable for him to share how can you compete globally on different places where they have different the culture barrier is very big, right? And you being a US based on the US, you actually compete worldwide, right?
Correct.
Right. So this is what we're going to talk about. How can a company be successful based in the US or anywhere else going and playing offense to other continents, right?
Right.
So tell us about yourself. Tell us about your mileage, right? I believe every time you go on a plane, it's like your 9 to 5, right? It's like your office space.
It is.
Yeah.
It is my office space.
So how do you start in this industry, first of all?
How we all started into this industry is we kind of stumble into it, and then it grows on you, and then you can't get out. You just love it so much you don't want to leave.
So you're based in Cincinnati?
Yes, sir.
So were you born and raised there?
No, sir. I was born in Connecticut.
Connecticut?
Went to college in Indiana, but I've been in Cincinnati for probably the last 35 years, so it's on.
Well, you've been in Cincinnati for the last 15 years because the other 15 years you have been all over the world.
Well, when I got out of college, I worked for General Electric in
General Electric.
Ohio.
Okay.
Aircraft engine design engineer.
Okay. Heat treat?
I was a design engineer. So
design engineer.
Designing the components.
Okay.
The flamethrower, the big on a military jet engine. You've seen the movie Top Gun.
I have.
The big flame that comes out the back end. That's what I designed.
Has the new Top Gun movie been released?
I don't know.
There was going to be a.
It's supposed to be out
like 30 years later, right? COVID. Yeah. So
So then I got into industrial instrumentation. It was a very technical sales position with a company called Bentley Nevada and Vibration Monitoring, which then led me into industrial instrumentation in the heat treat industry.
And then you started doing sales for heat treat, right?
I was doing sales for vibration monitoring, but then I got into the heat treat industry and it's been sales and market development ever since.
Okay, and you have also helped to develop sensor technology, am I right?
Super actually helped develop, yes.
Okay.
For the high temperature oxygen sensor.
And this sensor actually measures oxygens for steel application and glass application.
Correct. Glass, steel, ceramic, high temperature applications.
Yeah, so we're talking about sensor technology a little bit and why it's important to measure oxygen on a furnace, you know. I believe that will bring a lot of value. But I believe like a great topic to have is like, give us an overview of globalized heat treat. You know, you could give us like a very brief summary. Well, you can take as much time as you want, but you know, how heat treat is working down in the United States, which is where you live. Of course, you got Canada, Mexico, which is like the NAFTA 2.0. Right? Latin America. So maybe we can go on every continent. What do you see? Why you don't see the similarities, the differences, and the challenges? Why don't we start with Europe?
You know, it's cleaner. It's a lot of automotive.
A lot of automotive.
And it's typically it's a lot cleaner, a lot more instrumentation based, less people, more automation in the process.
So Europe is way more automated than the United States.
I would say in general, yes.
Okay, it's a common belief that European equipment is way smaller. Would that be accurate to say?
Compared to the United States, yes.
The American way, you know, the big pushers, the big furnaces. So
you don't have what was the name of that applied furnace?
The Monster.
Yeah, you don't have that.
You see 30 by 48 by 30 at most.
Right. It's smaller furnaces, smaller batches.
But you say fully automated, right?
It's more. Yes, it's more automated in general. So there's more human intervention, like in India versus the United States versus Japan. So they have a lot more automation, a lot more PLC-based solutions.
Okay, less people, more automation on heat treat shops.
Correct.
But also, I will assume that Europe is a more mature market.
Correct.
And plants will be, I wouldn't like to say older, but you know, have more time on their structure, on their equipment. They're all affordances, I guess.
Right.
Will that automation be a retrofit of the first time the furnaces were built? Was that an upgrade? Or are they still buying new furnaces?
No, they're still buying new furnaces over there.
Right.
New processes, you know, whether they get into carburizing or some of those other things, they still are expanding their capabilities, expanding their shops, and they're adding furnaces.
And you say it's mainly automotive, but what other markets do you see in Europe? You know, Germany, of course, a big player, I guess.
Right. You see the aerospace, that's the medical industry. Those are the three biggies, probably.
And so Germany is well known for automotive. You know, you got the Mercedes, the BMW, so Volkswagen. So there's a lot of heat treat on Germany. What will be the percentage, Europe-wise? How much percentage of heat treat is actually located in Germany? If we want to compare Europe-wise.
Minimum 50%.
50% of heat treat in Europe is in Germany.
Minimum.
And the other percentage?
I'd say 25-30% is in France.
Okay.
And then maybe 10% Italy, 10% Spain.
Spain? Turkey?
It's hard for me to.
Well, so Germany is the big player, then
Yes.
France,
Then
Italy,
Spain,
Spain.
and then Turkey would be the next one, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe the UK.
What about the Nordic countries like Finland and?
There's some there.
There's some there, but not as big as in Germany. So,
Correct.
so if you were to go on a heat treat tour, Germany, and you have a couple of extra days.
We're going to stop in Italy at Ferrari.
Right. Oh well, does Ferrari has their own heat treat?
Yes, they do.
How cool is it?
It's beyond cool.
Is it red?
Part of it, yes.
The furnaces are red.
Yeah. What's interesting about their heat treat shop, and I've never seen it anywhere else in the world, they actually have live plants in the heat treat shop.
They have live plants?
Live plants. It's like a jungle.
So
I see. You're in the facility, you're like, where's the heat treat shop? They're like, right there.
Well,
all you you see is plants.
Remember the other, well, I don't know if we were ever on Enco together, that they had like a fish pond next to the pusher furnace, and they were doing some fresh squash, and the fish pond was Turkey blue, Turkish blue. So
I did ask the question, why the garden inside the heat treat shop? And they said it was to maintain the humidity level in the factory to ensure the highest possible quality.
Okay, so what process do they run in there? Carburizing?
They run everything there.
They run
forging, the carburizing, the nitriding, they do it all.
So Ferrari does their own thing?
When I was there, yes, they did their own thing.
Okay. Well, which other cool heat treat shops like Ferrari have you been into?
That's the coolest one of them all.
Ferrari?
Yeah. Because they also have the Formula One cars when you walk in.
Okay.
And you get to sit in them if you want. So it's incredible.
That'll be worth seeing, you know.
Yeah.
And this is pretty cool because last time we were talking about, with Steven Christopher about the SpaceX heat treat place. You know, this will be another interesting one to see the Ferrari one.
So this is that Blue Origin from a space standpoint would be cool to see.
The Ferrari one is in Italy, I guess, right?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. So which other shops have you visited there that are unique?
That stand out? Really stand out?
Well, they're fancy like Ferrari.
But it doesn't have to be fancy.
Man.
A Kamaz in Russia, where you go into one of these facilities and there's 37 Holcroft push.
Yeah, I heard like Kamaz might be the biggest heat treat facility in the world.
It's incredible. And then you go to another room, so they have a separate room, and there'll be there was 36 batch nitriding furnaces.
So they got like 40 pushers and
it's
40
multiple batch lines, and then in another room they'll have equipment with 10 generators.
So this is in Russia?
Yes.
Okay, and how well maintained is the plant?
Parts really well, parts not so well.
So Kamaz, are they a supplier for automotive in Russia, or
they make automobiles? So it's a brand.
Oh, it's a Russian brand for automobiles. Okay.
And they also make transport vehicles and Jeeps, if you want to think of it as a Jeep. They make those kind of vehicles for the Russian military.
Okay, so that's Europe. I mean Germany. Well, so when you told me 50% in Germany, 30 in France, something a little bit in Italy and Spain, were you taking into consideration Russia as well?
Russia's its own world.
Russia is like their own
continent.
continent.
The CIS states, they're separate from Europe.
Okay, but if you were to measure the amount of heat treat in Russia against Germany, which is bigger? Russia or Germany?
I'd say Germany, but you never know with the Russians.
Okay, you never know with the Russians. We would like to say hi to the Russian audience, right? Right. So I'll guess Russia is a very big country, right?
Yes, it is.
Where is the industry located in Russia?
I've been from Moscow all the way out to Ekaterinburg and Perm, all the way up to Jesk. There's all kinds of places.
And you have to take a plane there, right?
Yes, you do.
You can't drive because the distances are just enormously large.
I guess that'd be the other cool place I went to was the Kalashnikov factory in Russia.
And well, talking about, and this is where the fun part of the podcast begins, because we want to talk about cultural differences on the world, right? So, speaking about Russia, is it really true that when you want to close a deal or something, you have to do business, and sorry for the cliche, you have to negotiate where you're drinking heavily? Would it be accurate to say? To have a bunch of vodka while the negotiations taking place?
In all my trips to Russia,
okay,
I believe I've drank vodka twice.
Okay.
And it was a shot, not a massive amount. I have not had to do that. I don't have that experience.
You don't? So what's your experience dealing with the Russian culture while closing big jobs?
They're just average, everyday people, good guys. And
I know they're great guys.
If you provide a solution and they trust you, that's really what it's all about.
So very business-like in Russia?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No vodka with the cola?
I haven't had to.
Okay, maybe you haven't gone to the right places.
Well, there wasn't a couple nights where I got entertained rather uniquely. So.
Right. Okay, so that's Europe, so mostly Germany. Let's talk.
As a segue, the only time I really had to drink to get the business was in Taiwan.
Okay, Taiwan.
It was in
We'll,
Taiwan.
we'll get to Asia in a little bit. So I just want to clear Europe. So when you say Europe, you say mainly automotive,
Yep. And aerospace.
aerospace, but highly automated, less people,
Yes.
much more equipment compared to the States, and it's heavily in Germany, then France, Spain, and Italy, and a little bit here, a little bit there, right? And Russia is their own thing,
Yep.
was what you said. So Russia, I assume, will be mainly automotive as well, right?
There's a lot of military too.
Yeah, defense. Okay.
And a lot of aerospace.
A lot of aerospace and defense in Russia, and processes will be like basic carburizing oil quench.
It's the same processes that are run all over the world.
Okay, so that's Russia, and before going to Asia, because everybody wants to talk about China, but I believe it's important to give some time to each of the continents. You mentioned Africa, so we have railroads in Africa. You say Turkey, you say South Africa, which is way south.
Right. You also have drilling equipment,
Drilling equipment, there-
agricultural equipment.
Right. Okay. And how's to work heat-wise in Africa? Big distances? Is there a cultural shock? I bet there is, but just wondering.
That's where I think that industry is shrinking. It's very old, so the least automated, the oldest, and it's the business levels just are low in Africa.
Okay, very manual. Very low tech. They just have to. We were talking with Andres Bernal in the other episode of the show. He's from Colombia. And he told us that the Colombian market is only for spares for the if they have like a big press or something, they'll do the part and they'll heat treat, and that will be the market, right? Not just to absorb the heat treatment of a part that you can actually machine there and ship it to other country to be heat treated and back. So would that be accurate? A little.
Yeah.
So
And I know there's one of the aircraft engine companies is building a service center in Africa. It's either Ethiopia or Eritrea. I can never pronounce it.
So how do you get the contacts in there? Do you call Ethiopia and ask for a customer visit? How do you prospect in South Africa?
Some of it they show at a heat treat show.
Okay.
Some of it's while you're sitting on an airplane talking to somebody.
Really?
Really?
You do business like that on an airplane?
That's how I found about the aircraft servicing in Africa. It was a GE service guy. I think it was GE. That he was SNECMA maybe. He was heading off to Africa. And I'm like, what are you doing there? Well, we'll go to a big facility. I went, okay.
And you just took a plane to Africa?
I haven't been there yet.
Oh, you haven't been there yet. Okay, you're building the case.
They're good, right? It takes time.
It takes time, and a lot of mileage. I guess.
Well, then you end up like we have a customer in Cincinnati called Barnes Aerospace. Well, they also have a facility in Singapore. So then they get something. The people from Singapore stop into the facility in Cincinnati. They see what they have, and they're like, "Hey, we want that too." Next thing you know, you have the opportunity to go to Singapore to sell a system, and then then they say that guy leaves and goes to Pratt & Whitney or General Electric or one of the other companies. He takes that technology with him, so it expands from there.
Yeah. So now let's go to Asia. Everybody
You want to go South America first?
Let's go South America first, of course.
Colombia.
Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay. I've been in Venezuela. I was there.
Chile.
Yeah. How's the market there?
Small.
Small. And when you say small,
It's like one or two states in America, or like a state in Mexico. But that's
spread out.
Spread out.
Spread out. Okay. And you travel much there?
Probably depends. It goes through cycles. Sometimes it's twice a year. Sometimes I don't go there for 3 years. So
And which is like the biggest concentration of industry in Latin America? Well, not
it would
Mexico.
be Brazil, but from a business standpoint right now, Argentina and Chile have better opportunities.
And is it true that Brazil is a very difficult country to
Yes.
compete with the internal, I guess, say capacity, because the conception is that Brazil is very big on taxes for foreign countries.
Correct.
Okay, so can you go deeper on that?
It's difficult. So if you sell something like, say, this pen costs $1 here in Mexico, like it costs $1 in the United States, right? You ship it to Brazil, and you're going to sell it. $2 minimum for you to sell that pen.
in Brazil.
Yeah.
Because they want to have,
Huge taxes on importation.
but they're trying to protect their own industry.
Correct.
So if you sell something in Brazil, is that it means that they didn't have a way to do it.
Or your product is so good and provides such value that it exceeds the local content.
Which is your case.
Yes.
You're a great salesman, man.
No, we have great products.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you say Brazil is the maximum concentration of business there.
But from a revenue standpoint, it wouldn't be because it's difficult, so difficult to do business in Brazil, and the industry is lagging because of all the restrictions.
Uh-huh.
They just don't have.
And their market is mainly automotive.
Mainly, yes.
Mainly automotive. I think there was some aerospace there.
There is, but a lot of that's moving. So like Bombardier, I think it's Bombardier, no, that's Canadian, Embraer.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving some of their stuff, I believe, it's into Querétaro.
I believed, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we used to have a John Deere dealership in the past, but Brazil is huge with tractors because they have so much agriculture.
Yeah.
I would assume that they have some heat capacity for John Deere tractors or New Holland. I don't know if
Yeah, it's Tafe and some of the other guys.
They have?
Yeah.
Do they have their own tractor? Brazilians?
Don't think they have their own brand, I believe they're made there.
I know Russians have their own tractor,
Yes, they do.
but now let's go to Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody wants to talk about Asia right now. China is like the trending topic now. So how would you describe Asia heat-treat-wise? Let's start with Asia.
I'd say there's 5,
Okay.
maybe 6 sections.
Okay.
You got India,
India,
Taiwan,
Taiwan.
Korea,
Mhm.
Japan,
I'm assuming South Korea, right?
yes,
Okay.
Japan. Then I call it Southeast Asia, which is Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. That's like its own little
And
world.
just to recap, this guy has been to all of these places,
And then China.
and then China.
Right. So Singapore, Malaysia,
Okay, so
all those are Southeast Asia.
Introduce the market however you want. I mean, those specs.
So Taiwan's the king of fasteners, right?
Taiwan fasteners.
Fasteners. They are the
Mesh
king of
belts.
fasteners.
Mesh belts.
Mesh belts out. That's Sanyong. They're the biggest, the best. They're fantastic.
They're based in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Okay. So all fasteners. A lot of business for fasteners. There's mesh belts.
And a lot of like hand tools, like the socket sets, socket wrenches, all those things. Those are made there as well.
Okay.
So,
Screwdrivers and stuff.
yeah, it's basic hand tools, but they're really good, really efficient, and highly concentrated there.
How big are their plants?
You'll have 6, 7 mesh belt furnaces in a single plant.
In Taiwan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can visit 7, 8 customers in a single day in Taiwan.
So they're very
Right
well.
next to each other.
They're right next to each other.
And there's
So
lots of-
everybody knows
everybody knows
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah. They might be even related, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big family, they all take care of each other. Yeah, there's some competition in some of them, but overall in general, they're
And do
good.
they have their own, do they heat treat for a Taiwanese OEM for tools, or they export the fasteners to somewhere else?
They're doing it locally and then they're exporting it out of there.
Okay, that's Taiwan, so fasteners pretty much.
That's the biggest part of their market,
Is
yes.
it automotive or just regular industry?
Every industry.
Every industry that needs a fastener.
So if you can imagine a mesh belt furnace, have you ever seen the bolt that goes into a wind turbine?
I have.
They're like 40 kilograms, right?
Mhm.
Those big, huge things. They can do that in a mesh belt.
A bolt that big wouldn't be considered a fastener, but I get your point.
It's considered a fastener.
Well, it's a big fastener.
It is.
It is.
It's a huge hunk of metal, and then you see it in the mesh belt. You're like, how the heck are they doing that? That's how good their technology is for that.
And when you go on those trips, do you go for a week, 10 days?
A week.
A week, only to Taiwan.
It'll be Taiwan or it'll be to Thailand, single country.
Okay, okay. So we talked about Taiwan, king of fasteners. What do you want to follow next? Japan? Korea?
If you go to like Southeast Asia, which would be Indonesia, Thailand,
okay.
Singapore, all those guys. Other than Singapore, they're all basically supporting the Japanese automotive industry. So that's
Okay.
the majority of the
And they do
business.
parts for automotive.
Correct.
So Singapore, it's kind of like the manufacturer.
Well, that's everywhere, but Singapore's going to have everything, but they're primarily aerospace, and there's a huge aerospace market in Singapore. Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, they're all supporting the Japanese automotive
So
industry.
because like, well, all the big Japanese car companies, Japan is very limited on resources, people, so they're using a lot of South Korea for their parts. And you stated that
Indonesia is huge,
Indonesia is huge
huge.
to supply Japan for parts.
They supply parts for the Japanese automotive companies, yes.
So Japan will be the big player for, you will say that Indonesia, Taiwan,
The majority of
they supply
Indonesia,
it for Japan.
in Indonesia, yes.
Okay, so is there a lot of the Toyota way there? And
Yep.
all the mentality, like we got our CQI9 here.
It is,
What do they do there in Indonesia?
they take the name CQI9 off the document and use it.
And how's it go? What's the Japanese CQI9? The Toyota 9.
It's the CQI9 document stripped of its
Yeah,
document.
but you know how, what's the name?
They don't really, it's a
Like it's on kanji? It's on kanji -9?
It's a quality system.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same, just with a different name.
Correct.
I heard something, I don't know what, with the CQI9, that the American companies actually teamed up with the European companies and now they have like a standard. Do you know something
They're
about it?
working on that.
They're working on that, it's a process.
Yes. So
Okay.
I believe it's through AIAG.
Okay,
And
yeah, AAG.
That's hard to say.
Mhm.
And it's going to be all of the European and American automotive companies are coming together to create a single specification.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is what's important, say, to Mercedes,
Mhm.
may not be important to Renault,
Mhm.
which may not be important to Ford.
Mhm.
And so you have three different standards, and even though your bolt might go into all three, you have to maintain three systems. So the same reason for CQI9 came about for the big three automotive, they're going to expand it
To Europe.
to everybody.
It was standardized.
And whether the Japanese join or not, the Koreans join or not, I don't know yet. I haven't heard that part yet.
Well, I believe Japanese, they like to do things in their own way, right?
They make changes incrementally. It's one step at a time as
Mhm.
opposed to big jumps.
And as well, maybe Japan might be and this is my impression, might be one of the hardest countries to compete because they're a very localized market.
They do things their way.
Their way, right?
And what I was getting at with the change is it's incremental. It
Mhm.
makes small steps.
Right, little by little.
So to switch from, say, a Japanese supplier to a European supplier, or to switch to an American supplier, that's a big change.
Mhm.
And that's not easy to happen.
Even if the Japanese company is outside of Japan.
So you can be outside of Japan, and every facility outside of Japan might say use Super Systems, or
Mhm.
they might use somebody else, right? But you go into Japan, they're not using you.
The reason being,
It's in country versus out of the country.
Okay.
It's cultural, so it takes someone to make the change, to make the decision to change.
so you have to work a lot with the
Long
guy,
time.
a lot of patience.
And so that's the downside to the Japanese system. The benefit to their system is if you think about some of the better cars that are manufactured in this world today, whether it's Toyota or Honda, they're really good cars.
And the reason being is that they take time to.
They increment. Like every 2 years, Honda comes out with a new car. 2 years later, they come out with an update to that new car. And then 2 years later, they come up with a redesign. So it's incrementally done where they're constantly improving, this continuous improvement process. So they're constantly improving slowly but surely. And so they refine it to the point where they're better than everybody else at it. So the downside to their system is they don't make big changes. The upside is they get to those big changes in time.
Would you say Japan has the same level of heat treat as Germany?
No, it's not. It's different.
It's different?
It's different.
Okay.
So the Japanese, like on a generator, might control it with CO2, or they might control it with carbon potential.
No, but I mean,
so they use different approaches.
My question was about heat treat volume.
Mhm.
You mentioned that.
Oh, the volume?
Well, you said Europe, 50% of the volume of Europe is in, not of the volume, of the heat treat capacity, let's say it's in Germany.
Mhm.
How big is Japan compared to Germany? So I'm sorry to put you on the spot, just,
I'd say comparable.
so what?
Comparable.
Okay?
I'd say it's comparable. similar in size.
Similar size.
Right, and if you think about the heat treat world, there's like 3 different philosophies of the way you do the heat treating. And there's the German way, the American way, and the Japanese way. Those are really, and they're slight variations of the same thing. They get the same results, but how they go about solving problems or creating their solutions or maintaining their furnaces or doing the controls, there's 3 ways of doing it.
So every time that you land in an airport,
Yes.
I believe you have to, well, I'm assuming that you have to say, things are done here this way. You have like to
Switch.
switch.
Yes.
If you're in Germany, if you're in China, if you're in Japan. India, okay? Now let's go to...
That requires a completely different switch.
It is a completely different switch? Okay, so let's talk about India. So, well, but before, I will assume that Japan is highly automated.
Not really.
Not really?
No. Germany's more automated.
Germany is more automated.
Right.
And Japan, how would you describe the heat treat?
Consistent.
Consistent, okay?
Everything about the Japanese is
A lot of
consistent.
discipline.
Correct. They know how to do it, they do it right, and they do it repeatably every single time.
Right, so I will assume, me being a maintenance guy, that Japan is very into maintenance and following
Correct.
preventive maintenance because of the other way. So that will be like the leanest place for maintenance, I will assume.
Right, so if you think about like a generator producing an endothermic gas, right? And you might go in and tweak it or change it, adjust it. They don't do that. It's keep it the same, keep it going, because I know if I do it this way every time, I'm going to get the same results every time. I'm going to get the good results every time.
So the spare part markets in Japan is like not the best spare part market.
No, they'll change probes every year. They do a lot of different things, but it's the Japanese market. If you're not in Japan, it's going to be very difficult to compete.
To compete with Japanese companies.
Correct.
Being from outside.
Correct.
Okay. Now let's go back. Let's go to India.
Yes.
Right. I know you've been traveling. Well, I haven't been traveling to India, but you've been to India like 20 times. More than that?
Probably 60.
To India?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So please enlighten us about how's India run. It's a big cultural switch as well because I guess the conception of India is that it's I will assume automotive, but highly.
A lot of aerospace, a lot of automotive.
Okay. Okay.
So think of it as the Americans, the Germans, and the Japanese, and the Koreans for that matter, all have invested in India.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all the different types of heat treat markets. They'll supply parts to Europe or supply parts to the United States. Or they manufacture for the internal market to the American standard or the German standard.
What was the company in India? Tata, right? Tata Motors is like their big, the big India automotive company, right?
Yes.
And they actually own Jaguar, right?
And Land Rover.
And Land Rover. So the Indians actually conquered their conquerors.
Right, and then
Right.
like the steel industry, ArcelorMittal and Tata
That's
Steel,
India.
those are both Indian
And
companies.
ArcelorMittal is like the biggest steel mill in the world,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And so, speaking of which, you go into a lot of steel mills,
Yeah.
right? We're going to get to India at least, but the biggest steel manufacturers in the world, will you say, is ArcelorMittal, number one, and I believe there's Nippon Steel in Japan.
Yes.
I don't know what size,
I don't remember all the names.
US Steel is also pretty big.
There's a bunch of Japanese, or not Japanese, Chinese steel manufacturers, like I believe it's Bao Steel, Mining,
Yeah, like the biggest in US, I don't know if I'm right, is US Steel.
or Nucor.
Or Nucor Steel, that's right. Those are like the big steel companies in the
But
States.
internationally, ArcelorMittal,
I believe that ours are like the biggest, like huge.
correct.
And then you got in Japan Nippon Steel, and we got a bunch in China.
Right. Correct.
So let's talk about more about India. So I will assume there's forging, there's castings in there,
Yes.
and I believe everybody has seen a video. But well, it might be a misconception, but I do believe if there's so much investment in there, there should be a lot of great state-of-the-art installations.
There are some.
Okay,
There are some that are extremely backwards.
Well,
It's just, and so in India they have the local market,
which is huge.
but By local, I mean like, it doesn't have to be as high quality, right? So they'll service that low-end quality, so you can have a low-end heat treat shop supplying the local guy, and it doesn't have to be that great. But then on the other side, you have companies like American Axle who are invested and have facilities there, or in Allison, and their quality is high standards.
State-of-the-art plants.
State-of-the-art plants, some of the best plants I've seen in the world.
Where's it located? Because also India is very large. So it's in Mumbai.
It'll be in Pune, it'll be in Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, Jamshedpur, Delhi. There's multiple locations for heat treat in India.
In India, and you've been to all of those.
Yes.
Which is your favorite place in India? And which is your favorite food?
The food might be a little easier. You got a little masala dosa, a little rogan josh, you know. There's some good food.
It's good food in India. Okay. Now, last but not least, well, we haven't talked about Korea. So
Right.
let's talk about Korea. So South Korea, also everybody thinks South Korea is like super high tech, which I believe it is.
It is.
It is. So let's talk about South Korea. Maybe automotive because there's Kia in there and stuff. So there's supply also for the Japanese company. But Korea is an interesting country because they have evolved in a really fast way in the last 20 years. And were you a witness to that?
I was. So, you know, we sit now and watch on our phones, you know, on your phone, your tablet, a TV show, right? I'd say it was 7, 8 years ago, I was in Seoul, and I saw this woman standing there with her phone, and I'm like, what is she doing? And the guy I was with goes, she's watching a TV show. In the car, we'd stop, and as soon as we stopped, a TV would pop on, and the guy was watching the baseball game while I was waiting in traffic.
So they're super high
That
tech.
was 10 years ago.
Okay.
So they're 10 years past us from a technology standpoint. But on the heat treat side, they're very similar to the Japanese.
But very high tech on I will say electronics.
Correct.
So
And you got to keep in mind that half the country lives in Seoul, which is a big city. And so they're able to keep it all concentrated and keep people connected that way.
is the industry in Seoul or is
The industry's outside of Seoul,
okay?
but half the people live in Seoul.
And where are the factories at?
South, Busan, middle of the country.
Mainly automotive because also
Yes.
okay. But there's a lot of electronics in there as well.
Right. But you also got trucks, they have chemical, but they also have chemical industry, steel, shipbuilding, a lot of different, they have a diverse industry, it's just no aviation, I would say.
Oh, I would love to go to South Korea. It's like
The food is fantastic.
food is fantastic, and I have heard that it's like traveling on time. Like you know, they're way more advanced for electronics and gadgets, and they like all these neon lights and stuff. So it will be like traveling 10 years in the future.
But it's also like going 10 years in the past.
Okay.
Because when you're out in the countryside,
Well, you'll see a lot more of the rural
there's
areas.
more rural, and they're like living the way they did traditionally 100 years ago. Now they have electricity and modern things, but they're still farming and doing the things they're doing the traditional way. So you see both sides.
Yeah, well, I believe that's the beauty of like the Asian culture.
Yeah.
That they can be very high-end on technology, but there's always like the romanticism to go on the
Right.
you know the rice crops. I don't know.
It's interesting. It's
It
a very
is.
interesting place.
So it will be like a big big difference when you're driving from one city to another. And just living the urban area and watching all these fields. Is that what you're saying? It's
Yeah.
like one relative to the other.
Right, and then on the coastal areas, you get the fishing, you get the fishing communities as well, and you get to see all of that. So it's pretty interesting.
So, what you're saying, I believe that being in South Korea is one of your favorite places of all over the world.
It's,
From what I'm sensing.
it's up there. I like Italy the best. probably.
Italy the best, okay? We have a great, I'm actually going to invite Alberto Sanaz from Italy. He's a great dude.
Exactly.
I believe he'll be a great, he's like the most Italian guy ever, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to is you go where the people are, you have the relationships, the good people, the nice people, and that's what you remember the most. So Alberto is one of my favorite guys in the whole world.
He's in Italy, right?
Yes.
He's in Milan.
Yes.
So I believe it's fun to see, how different. What I found interesting is how people will run a heat shop in Italy and how will be run in Japan. You know, we talked about the discipline and doing
Right.
that. So
It's pretty.
I will enjoy analyzing that. You know, I believe you can take the best practices and some practices that even if they perform and execute well on the part, if you try to implement it in another place on the planet, it won't work because of the cultural difference.
Right.
Do you have an example for that?
Heat treat.
No, I'll tell you something because we're in the furnace business. So I knew a guy. He's had a lot of knowledge on. His name is Gordon Cardio. He had a lot of knowledge about how to build furnaces.
Yes, he did.
And he was in China, and he was showing the guys how to build furnaces, right? And the guys in China were squatting. Because in Asia people like to squat position, they like to weld. And Gordon told the guys, use a chair. You know, it's more ergonomic, right? And they went, okay. And next time he was there, they were squatting on the chair, right? So this tells you how places are different from each other and how best practices do not apply to one country.
Right, but from what I see, when you're running a furnace and you have atmosphere and probes and controllers, those are pretty consistent all over the world.
Well, there's difference. For an example, one of the big difference from the NFPA and the CE is that American furnaces like to have their pilot always on. Right, we're talking about IQ furnaces.
Right.
And whenever they open the door and we have a flame curtain, the pilot has to be on all the time, so we can have flame strength. And in Europe, I believe, since as we stated, things are more automated, the pilot goes on and goes off. But you have to have a flame detector, which will tell the PLC that the pilot is on and off. Right, but the pilot is constantly turning on and off. But if it's not on, the door won't open.
Correct.
So those are the kind of things that you cannot argue with the two sides because you know there's different ways to get to the goal.
As long as it works.
As long as it works and as long as it's safe. Okay. China.
Interesting place.
Interesting place. Big place.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Huge. So where's the industry in China? Mainly automotive, or construct. I believe there's a lot of construction in there.
Yes.
Right. You have an office in Shanghai, but there's some industry close to Shanghai. But I do believe it's like its own continent, China.
50% of the heat treat is probably within a 4-hour drive of Shanghai. There's different provinces around there, different states, where you can get there. So there's a lot of industry in that Shanghai region. And then the other big one is up in Tianjin and Beijing up in there, and then up north in Harbin and places like that.
And this is a question, because the Chinese China is growing a lot. A lot of their stuff is being manufactured in China. Do you think China is self-sufficient for its own market?
They're close.
But they're importing stuff from Asia.
They're importing things from lots of places.
But they're close to being self-sufficient.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. But what are they importing?
Oxygen sensors.
Well, okay, sensor technology.
Controllers. They're importing right now the knowledge.
Okay.
So some of the more of the complex systems, they're importing the knowledge and implementing that.
So they're importing the stuff, they are analyzing it, and after a period of time they manufacture it.
Correct.
Okay.
Think of it as the Japanese 40 years ago when they used to import things and they were making everything was made in Japan, and then it switched to made in Taiwan. Then it was made in China. There's an evolution of their economy, and their economy is evolving to the point where it's becoming self-sufficient.
And quality-wise, this is the cliche that I believe everybody has, where we say it's made in China, it's low cost and low quality. Is that accurate to say, or China has elevated their level of quality?
Yes and no. It's no different than India when I was talking about the low end and the high end. China has a low end and a high end as well.
Okay.
So
there's no middle?
The middle's disappearing.
Okay.
It really is. So you're either going to accept the low quality stuff, or you want something that's going to work and last. So there's the middle market's disappearing.
But the high-end stuff is gonna be pricing-wise similar
All over the world.
all over the world.
Right.
But I mean, if you have a high-end Chinese
It's good.
sensor,
Hmm.
will it match the price of a sensor made in US?
It'll be, if you're saying like an oxygen probe.
Yeah, I'm talking about, let's say a probe, $1,000,
Right,
right?
it'll be less expensive, but it won't be the same quality.
So it will be less expensive.
Yeah,
How much less expensive? Because the general talk is that everybody,
it can be as much as 40 to 50%.
or 50%, right? So I believe this is like the game. If you can get all the logistics, which I believe right now are a pain about, the language barrier, the paperwork, you can import, because, I get this every time, we can buy something cheaper from China. Sure you can buy something cheaper from China, but, it's gonna be a hell of a ride, and it's like flipping a coin.
And I'll give you like an alloy, that's something that's up your alley. What I've heard is the first order that you get is going to be fantastic.
You're talking about alloy.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second order, maybe it's still that good. And then by the third, fourth, fifth, the quality tends to decrease. And for the experience I've had from customers is that initial Chinese import's great, and then over time you end up switching back to the original supplier.
And I admire, I have traveled with you and I have visited places, but I admire that you go to China and you're like, we're gonna compete, man, and you take offense. How do you do it? I mean, if you go to China, you have relationships now, but you are promoting a U.S. product, right, in China that is U.S. made, right, that have to travel all the way from the U.S. all the way to Shanghai, I don't know, on a boat or on a plane, or maybe you take a briefcase, right?
Right.
How do you still compete against a high-end product 50% cheaper than the one you manufacture?
We don't sell a product, we are an asset to other companies' organizations. So if you're competing on a product basis, you're going to lose.
Okay.
You have to add value, you have to add a certain quality, a certain asset to that other organization, and that comes down to people. So as a company, we know that to sell, like, we could go after the Japanese market right now, and we could go all on an offensive. We're not going to be successful. Because you have to have the people, the local resources to support you and build those relationships. You can have the greatest product in the world, but if you can't support it, you're not going to last.
Right, or you can be the best salesman in the world,
And you have a crappy product,
and you have
right. You might get the initial sale, but you're not
That's
going to
it.
long term. So you have to have the quality product, the quality people, and you got to be able to support it locally. And you can see what we've done in Mexico. We started about 10 years ago, right? And think about where we were 10 years ago versus where we are today.
So having a team that knows the way the country is run,
Correct.
the cultural differences, the standard practices, speak the language.
Correct.
It's part of the success, right? Like,
And then you also have the flip side of that is from a corporate standpoint in the USA, an American company, you have to then be able to support those people. So 10 years ago, I spent a lot of time in Mexico. As time progresses, I don't spend as much time down
you
here.
have a team now.
Now we have a team, we have other resources that come down here and support the team we have in place in Mexico. So then you can go to the next market, And so you have to be able to support it. And to do that, you got to have the time to invest in it, but you also got to find the right people. And that's how we decide what market to go after next. Where do we find the right person? Where do we find that right partner to then go, all right, I'm going to invest my time in this country because that opportunity is there. We have the opportunity to grow the business.
So of all the people that I know, if you were to tell me whose job has been the most evolved, I would say from COVID would be yourself, because you used to be traveling all the way in planes, visiting places, shaking hands with I don't know, many guys all over the world, because that's your job, right?
Right.
So how have you continued to perform your job, which is actually selling stuff or promoting the business in all over the world with these different time zones? Do you use Zoom, Skype, Teams, calls, emails? Because you still have results to give, right?
Correct.
What would you recommend to the audience that it's feel like the salesman that can't travel and they're frustrating? If someone should be frustrating, is this guy, and he just told me before the interview is that he's rocking it. So any advice for this salesman that they're making excuses not to travel and that's why they're not landing POs?
So there's two parts to your question.
Yeah.
The first part is existing business, and the other part is expanding the business. So for us to say, try and expand into a new country, it's not going to happen right now. But to work with the guys in Mexico, where you have a relationship, or India, or wherever, or it could be China, Indonesia, that relationship you have with them, they're in the same situation you are. And so there's a camaraderie associated with that. And because you have the relationships, the many, many years, you're able to leverage that via Skype, Zoom calls, email, whatever it happens to be, to grow the business and support them in what they're doing. Because you created those good people, you have those...
That's existing business.
Right. So you have the existing infrastructure and quality people who are, if you have the right people, they're going to want to grow their business locally, whether you're there or not. But the relationships, you have to have those in place. You've got to have those, or else you're not going to be successful. So it's all based on that 15 to 20 years of building relationships over time. That without that,
How long have you been in this business again?
with Super Systems, is 17 years.
17 years now. Okay,
This was Super Systems.
That was Super System. Okay, so let's get to the other section that I really like, the heat treat hack of today. Right?
Yeah.
So you've been all over the world,
Yeah.
right? A lot of places, applications, you just told us about it. So what's a heat treat hack that you know? Something that you analyze, you saw, and nobody else has used, or very seldom people use, that when you enter just like a heat treat shop, say, I got this hack, I got this tool.
My tool is more around, you ask the questions, and we never really got into this, but in, say, Taiwan, it's 100% methanol, right? Mexico, they use natural gas in generators. You go other places, India, it's a lot of propane and LPG. There's parts of Russia where it's rocket fuel. Literally rocket fuel and water is what they're mixing to make their atmosphere. So the heat treat hack I have is, what's the atmosphere? What are they using to create that atmosphere?
What was it, the chemistry on the atmosphere?
Correct. So, but they can just tell you I'm running LPG, and so in your head you know it's got to be 23% CO, right? The hack is then you go to the probe, the controller, the analyzer, and you look at that CO factor that's in the instrument. A lot of the other competitors out there, a lot of the people who just sell instruments into the industry, they put a default 200 in there. And you could be in, when it's 100% methanol at 850 degrees Celsius, you don't want it at 200. You might want it at 270, 280. So the hack is just knowing how they're making that atmosphere and then how to adjust the CO factor to make their process better instantly.
It's what we were talking about. When you land in India, you say they use this type of atmosphere in here.
I know it now, yes.
Right? And then you can travel to Singapore and say, well, these guys, they do it this way.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Right.
Okay, you got to know the chemistry of the atmosphere because US is mainly on endo or naturally methanol.
Right.
But if a guy that, not Damian Bratcher, right? Just another guy will fly to India just to support a heat treat shop, he will assume it's endo, which you're saying it's not the case.
Right, and endo's not endo.
Right, it's not endo.
Right.
And it's a totally different animal.
Right, and in some parts of India, they're running as high as a 25% CO out of their endo generator. So you have to know those things. And the other one is like what I kind of alluded to, they use different technologies. In Germany, they're big on the lambda probe on a generator. Right? Europe's big on the lambda probe.
Yeah, I seen that.
And there's issues there. There's a whole other podcast unto itself. But you go to Japan, and there's a lot of CO2 control in the generator. And that's because if you go back 25, 30 years, you had to put the probe in the top hat. And you were doing it based on a carbon potential. Well, over time, they haven't necessarily changed. It works for them, Why are we going to change from CO2 to an oxygen probe? That doesn't make sense for me. So you have three distinct ways of controlling a generator. It might be a simple doer, a gold probe, or bazooka probe on a generator.
Then you take the sample from the...
Right, so you're going to have, in essence, but that's also an electrically heated generator versus, or a gas heated generator versus an electrically heated generator. So you have the one school, which is we're going to do it on dew point. The other school, we're going to use an oxygen, a lambda probe. We're going to do it this way, and then you get the CO2. So you have three different ways of ultimately.
And all of them work, right?
Right.
It's just different technology.
They work. They all work.
They all work
for a period of time. It's how long they last and how consistently they last. Yeah. So the hack is knowing where you are, how they do things, and then knowing based on that what that CO factor is. You can go in and make a quick change,
right.
And they're like, oh, how do you do that? And it's not like I'm smart or anything. I just happen to have a lot of experience.
Well, you know your stuff. I'm pretty sure. So it's been a blast talking to you, and great world update. Let's hope you have a more active 2021.
I want to be on a plane, yes.
You want to be on a plane? Yeah, this guy actually wants to travel on planes all year long. You're unique.
Still supposed to get my sleep.
Oh yeah, I bet. Well, that you fly, we'll assume you get a lot of upgrades to first class, right?
It's interesting. Delta, that's my primary airline. Right. Because they take care of me the best of all the airlines in the world.
Yeah, and we don't have a sponsorship on Delta.
No. It's just, but I'll fly any airline. I'll fly Air France. I'll fly airlines. But the team, the partnership of it, they take care of you better than all the other ones. That's my experience. Someone else may have a different experience. But at the end of the year, they send you a summary. Right? And the summary is you flew this many miles, you flew this many segments, like all the different information, this many countries were visited, like there's all this information.
Right.
But they also include the number of times you flew in the front of the plane. And a typical year, it's 3 times.
On the front of the plane?
On the front of the plane.
So maybe you can actually, you can put like a pen on the plane or something. The next time you're there, you can go grab it.
But the actual, everyone thinks, oh, he flies first. But no, in front of the plane, that first class seat, maybe 3 times a year.
Really?
Yeah. I'm generally bulkhead coach that very first row.
And you can sleep in those?
I can sleep anywhere, anytime.
Got it.
All you're gonna do is get into position, right? Just relax, and then you fall asleep.
Take a pill.
No pills.
No pills.
No pills. No. So infants, babies, you put them on a dryer. You have a little noise machine, and they fall asleep, right? Well, the jet engines for me are like that white noise, and it's like you just go.
You're flying now, Damian Bratcher?
Nah, I don't know.
Yeah. So just to conclude the show, what would be an advice or an experience you would like to share to the new generation of heat treaters? And I would like to ask this. If you were to travel on time and talk to yourself 20 years ago, what would you tell yourself? What have you learned through your entire career that you didn't learn in school, that you learned through mistakes, that if you had the chance, what would you share with yourself or with a new young engineer that was about to enter the heat treat industry?
Make sure that's what you want to do for life, because once you get into the heat treat industry,
great, just love it. Just love it.
You gotta love it. But once you're in it, you're not gonna want to leave, and you're gonna learn something new almost every single day. You will, as long as you keep your mind open. You're gonna learn.
I just love what you said. I tell everybody this is a very interesting industry. We're very passionate about what we do. And once it gets you,
you're in.
You're in.
Right.
And the guys that they kind of struggle, if they don't like it, they're going to be here for a long time.
Right.
But most of the guys like it.
And so when you go to a heat treat shop for me, and I get to see a huge variety of different things. And you'll be somewhere, and you'll be like a commercial heat treat shop, and you're like, what is this and what's it used for? Your goal is to try and figure it out without the customer telling you. It's not always successful. You're not always successful in figuring it out.
Fantastic. Thanks for the show. Let's hope it's not the last time we see you here this year.
Fingers crossed. Well, we hope to be here back in August for the 10-year anniversary of our office.
Totally. I hope I get an invitation.
I hope I get an invitation.
Well, thanks for the show. Please subscribe to the channel. This will be uploaded on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify. Great show with Damian Bratcher, the guy that has been all around the world on heat treat shops in any country and application. I really enjoy the show. So we'll be uploading the show weekly. We have some great guests lined up. So subscribe, hit like, and keep heat treating stuff.